There are a great many what you might call angry Trumpistas this morning, or frustrated Trumpistas, who believe that following Ted Cruz's victory last night in the Republican primary in Wisconsin, that the Republican Party will take away the prize that they feel Trump has earned when Trump gets to the national convention in July in Cleveland, Ohio. I will note this. In 1976, Ronald Reagan went into the Republican National Convention challenging a sitting president. We always hear Reagan's 11th commandment, speak ill of no other Republican. Well, he spoke ill of his fellow Republican that year plenty of times. Number two, Ford had the delegates he needed for the nomination. Yet Reagan's people did work to try and pry it away in hopes of giving it to their candidate. So let's get that out of the way. Yes, Cruz also won last night, but this doesn't necessarily mean that Ted's going to get much closer, because Donald Trump is likely going to pick up New York, his home state, California. Both are huge when it comes to delegate counts. Winner-take-all properties. He's going to be picking up New Jersey and likely Pennsylvania as well. In Pennsylvania, 200,000 Democrats have switched their party registration, it's believed, mainly so that they can vote for Donald Trump in the upcoming primary there. Trump's lead right now over Ted Cruz, 743 to 517. So just a couple of hundred. But Trump will not necessarily get to the number that he actually needs to win the Republican Party nomination. So what happens then? It really, I think, comes down to this. If Trump goes in and he's got a lead of 300 delegates, then I think that Trump could say, well, I'm still way ahead. And I think that people will give it to him, the nomination. But if Trump goes in, and we're picking arbitrary numbers here, but larger numbers versus smaller numbers, if he enters this thing and he has a lead of fewer than 200 delegates, then I think it's very much an open convention. And Ted Cruz has been using the rules. He's not been doing anything that is untoward. He's using the rules. He's been going around lining up delegates who would vote for him, switch their votes on a second ballot, which would in turn give him the nomination. But we're not writing off Donald Trump. It's interesting. Today I saw a lot of people who are doing that across media, especially conservatives who don't like him. Only one of them made any real sense. If I get an opportunity, if you allow me, I'll share that with you in a few minutes. That's a writer from the Wall Street Journal. I believe it's Holman W. Jenkins, Jr. But in the meantime, a man who is not a Trump fan, but still is quite the realist, Dr. Charles Krauthammer, appearing last night on the Fox News channel with Megyn Kelly, explained you simply can't count Donald Trump out.
I'm impressed by one thing. According to the exit polls, Trump, who will come in second if the exit polls are right, is going to have somewhere in the high 30s. Now, think about what has just happened. He runs in a state where he's up against a popular governor who has a very strong machine. He's also up against, this is Trump, up against very sophisticated, very influential local talk radio. He's also up against a ton of money. Huge amount was dropped on him. It wasn't only the Cruz money or the Cruz PACs, but it was the Stop Trump PACs. Dropped millions of dollars on him. And on top of all that, it comes after the worst 2 weeks of the campaign. In fact, Tucker said earlier it's the worst 2 weeks he's ever seen for any candidate. If, in spite of all of that, Trump comes in with the high 30s, then he has the most rock-solid floor of support of any candidate in memory.
So you've got a lot of conservatives right now who are jumping up and down and saying, aha, it's over with. Cruz is on a winning streak, and this thing is going to turn around. It's going to fall into his lap. Trump will be out of our way. We'll wash him from our hair, and won't that be a great thing? But I think Krauthammer is summing it up, and he's saying this, and that is simply don't yet count Trump out. And as I said, we've got many, many bigger states coming along. And those states are going to simply give Trump the lead that perhaps will be insurmountable going into Cleveland. This is the column, though, I'm talking about today, where people are saying, you know what, it's not so much that Trump's cooked. It's that it may well be Trump is cooking himself, and he may be doing it on purpose. Wall Street Journal, Holman W. Jenkins, Jr., writing in the op-ed pages there today, Donald Trump never wanted it enough, is what he opens the column with. Presidential race is all or nothing. Mr. Trump has not been all in. The most obvious way is with his unwillingness, the writer says, to put up the money though many overlooked his hesitance because he was doing so well with free media coverage. The money was significant of something larger, his unwillingness to work out the whole path to the presidency and his lack of 100% commitment to do the things necessary to succeed. Control his mouth, recruit credible advisors, produce a thoughtful policy program. Though it received surprisingly little commentary, his insistence on using his primary victory rallies to flog his golf courses, product lines, and related business interests. And he said he was never in serious in the Hillary Clinton sense. She's been running for 2 decades. He has been fingering his get-out option since he got in. So a couple of more bad performances could well give Trump the notion that maybe now's the time for me to step out, because there are people. But see, here's the thing. I don't think he's going to have those bad performances. But I read a column last week where someone was saying from inside his own camp, he never expected to get this far, and he was shocked. But because he likes to win, he can't really throw in the towel now because it would make people, well, he doesn't want to do a Ross Perot. He doesn't want that reputation because it will hurt his business interests, he believes, afterward. So the man could end up the nominee. He could end up the president of the United States. He could end up living in the White House and not want any of it. Isn't that quite fitting? Jenkins writes this, polls strongly suggest that Mr. Trump is opposed by more Republicans than support him. He would likely lose a straight-up one-on-one nomination fight against several of the GOP candidates who've already dropped out of the race. Coming up on 8:14, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. As media obsesses over Donald Trump and what last night means, and as I do not believe, again, once more, that it means a whole heck of a lot in the grand scheme of the entire primary process, they're missing another big story, and that is Hillary Clinton can't seem to win any longer either. Bernie Sanders speaking with his supporters last night after coming away with a big victory. 14 percentage points over Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin.
Change, real change, comes about, whether it is fighting racism, worker exploitation, sexism, homophobia. Real change comes about when people stand up and they look around them and they say, you know what? The status quo is not working. We can do better.
Now, the reason you're not hearing a lot of media squawk about Hillary Clinton the way they are about Donald Trump is Clinton with the superdelegates and the Democrat Party, the party of the little guy and the party of fairness and equality and all of that, already had set up the nomination for her, no matter what Bernie Sanders does. But see, this is where it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable. If Sanders continues to win, and he is on a bigger winning streak than Ted Cruz, he has now beaten Hillary Clinton in 6 out of 7 contests. 6 out of 7. I mean, his batting average is tremendous in the last few weeks. If he continues to win, and he starts picking up big states, and yes, he will not have the delegates needed to win the convention outright. But how can the Democrats then deny him? If from here on out, because the public mood in the early days of these primaries, we don't necessarily have all of the information we'd like to have when we go out and vote. And there was a lot of early voting in some of these states, and people voted early. Then 3 or 4 weeks later, they discovered that maybe they didn't want that candidate, but they couldn't change their votes. They learned more. As time goes on, we get more exposure to all of these people. So are the victories that are piled up by the guys who are in second place, are they more important now? And do they become more important in this calculus of all of this simply because the public has a greater understanding of what they stand for than, let's say, late January? You can reach our program today by giving me a telephone call at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Also, you can drop me an email, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. I've already had one brawl this morning with some Trumpistas on Facebook, who immediately lit into Ted Cruz saying, well, he's a serial adulterer. And folks, let's review this one more time. Ted Cruz has 3 strikes against him when it comes to mainstream media. He's a Texan, he's a conservative, and he's a devout Christian. They hate all of those things. If they saw an opportunity to take Ted Cruz down, they would have done it a long time ago. A handful of websites out there with put it this way, trust issues. You can't really verify who's behind them and who may be funneling money to them or the rumors to them or if the rumors are even true or just made up or a couple of supermarket tabloids. You can't take those on face value and say it must be true. You know, that old joke, well, I saw it on the internet, doesn't mean it's true. So here you have all of these people who are making these allegations against Cruz, and yet mainstream media, the big television networks and the big media on the East Coast in the newspaper business, they have not gone after him because they have not found anything to substantiate this. And you can't sit there and say, well, that's because they hate Trump. That's a stupid, stupid rationalization that you would only get from someone out there who is so blind because of their confirmation bias, they refuse to acknowledge any logic in all of this. So one of these people on Facebook this morning said something along the lines of, well, Cruz was asked about this a week ago or so, and he wouldn't give an answer. Let's back up. Cruz is a very devout evangelical Christian. Jesus said, I love this rebuttal one of my friends gave that person this morning. Jesus said, if you look at a woman with lust, you have committed adultery. So that means all of us. So when Cruz doesn't give a straight-up answer, now, later, in a succeeding interview over the weekend, he came right out and said, I've never cheated on my wife. Never happened. Nothing of the sort. And he's not exactly the most handsome dude out there, and perhaps that hurts him in his campaign because people wanted John Kennedy. They would have never voted for Kennedy if he'd had buck teeth and acne. 8:18, we've got about a minute before the break. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. You know, it just amazes me how people are latching on to this, and they're going after him on a accusation, which he did announce as soon as it came out. That's the problem. See, Trump's on the news every day, and he knows how to keep himself on it every day. You want to learn about what Trump Cruz does, you need to go find it. You got to go on his site and everything else. But he said it. But yet, they're all on this, but Trump is a person that has cheated on more than one wife.
Yes, and he's cheated with other people's wives.
And has admitted that he's probably going to do it again and get divorced. So, get over it. I don't think Cruz did it. It's just a bunch of baloney, and I'm getting sick and tired of these guys saying that Cruz is a liar, but yet you can prove everything that he's accused Trump of. You can find it on the internet easily.
Hey, thank you much for the call. Yeah, to sit there and say, well, at least Trump's honest about being a pig. Yeah, that's the guy I want in the White House. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 43. Dr. Jonathan Tripp will be joining us in a short while. Between 8:30 and 9 o'clock this morning, Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. Got to share this with you, too, this morning. Philip Klein, who writes for the Washington Examiner and is, I think, one of the fairest people writing in conservative media, says that John Kasich is just wasting people's time, calling Kasich a fridge candidate. And he runs down all of the finishes Kasich has had, how distant he's been. And he said, now Kasich's arguing, well, yeah, but I've been second or third a handful of times. Yeah, but that's because there's only 3 people left. So this guy's got to go. On the other hand, why is he still there? Well, I used to be a big fan of Reince Priebus. Reince Priebus got to start really with the Tea Party coalition way back in that era of 2009, 2010, when it was really getting some wind in its sails. He helped bring Scott Walker in as governor of Wisconsin, and then on the strength of the work he was doing, he ended up chairing the Republican National Committee, and he's been doing so for a very long time now. And I've admitted on the air before, there's a picture of Reince Priebus and I arm in arm standing outside a brewery at an event we were attending some years ago. At the time, I thought this is the guy that will really lead this party into the future and maybe start getting us away from those soft, those people who are willing to compromise all the time in Washington. Priebus appeared last night on Sean Hannity's program on the Fox News channel, and I just wrote down a note here. It reads, Priebus prevaricates. And Hannity's trying to pin him down on what's going to happen and who's going to pop up out of nowhere to try to steal the nomination away from the current candidates.
Our nominee is going to be someone running. And as far as this Paul Ryan talk, let me just say it again for the 10th time. Number one, he's not running. Number two, he doesn't want to. Number three, he doesn't like this talk.
Let me ask the question this way.
But number four, he's not going to have a floor operation to do any of these things.
Is it your opinion as the state chairman that the nominee of your party, are you confident tonight that it will be either Donald Trump or Ted Cruz? Are you confident?
I think this is what I'll say. I think our nominee is going to be someone who's running. Okay.
Someone who's running. He keeps repeating that. So that could be John Kasich, right? It's 826. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I want to remind you, if you're having difficulty hearing my program today or any day, you really need to give a telephone call or reach out in touch via internet. Dr. Christine Pickup. She's a doctor of audiology in Rupert, Idaho. Mott Harrison Audiology is the name. She's at the medical building at 1218 9th Street, unit number 2. Telephone number 312-0957. The website is mottharrisonaudiology.com. And she asks if you're on medication for high blood pressure or a diuretic. And reminds you these medications can affect your hearing. And your hearing health is a reflection of your overall health. When you come in for a free wellness hearing screening at Mott Harrison Audiology, Dr. Pickup will review your medications and also discuss ways to protect your hearing in the future. So I listened to that from Priebus last night and realized, this is the reason John Kasich is still hanging around. Kasich keeps walking around saying, well, I'm the only grown-up in the race, and so therefore you should vote for me. And they like me over at all the liberal newspapers, and if the liberal newspapers like me, then conservative Republicans should like me. Not going to sell with people. And if you get away, if Trump goes in and he's got the lead but not the necessary delegates to go over the top right away, and it ends up going to Cruz, who's 155 delegates behind, a lot of Republicans could probably still live with that. But if we go into that convention and it's not Trump or Cruz, and they decide to hand it to a guy who, we had this argument yesterday on the air, he has to win at least 8 states under the current bylaws. But if the Republicans suddenly decide to rewrite those bylaws days before the convention opens, that will allow Kasich to come in and scoop up that nomination. A lot of people are going to stay home. And if you thought Mitt Romney bobbled 2012 or John McCain bobbled 2008, you ain't seen nothing yet with what's going to happen in this particular situation or this particular case. And I warn you, Kasich is only at this point a spoiler, and all of this talk, well, I could beat Hillary Clinton in a general election. Well, they said Mitt Romney could beat Barack Obama in a general election. It didn't happen. They said John McCain could beat Barack Obama in a general election. It did not happen. Kasich is a fringe candidate from Phil Klein, writing at the Washington Examiner. The Midwest was supposed to be a stronghold for Kasich, yet on Tuesday he came in third, losing by 25 points to Senator Cruz, who was at the top. In the 32 states to hold preference votes for Republicans, including the District of Columbia, Kasich has only won his home state of Ohio, a record of 1-31. Beyond that, he has had 5 second-place finishes, 7 third-place finishes, 9 fourth-place finishes, 9 in 5th place, and 1 8th-place finish. This really understates Kasich's poor performance. To start, the only reason that those finishes have started to go from 5th to 4th to 3rd is that other candidates with no shot to win the nomination had the dignity to drop out. Kasich has demonstrated no such shame. He's only come within single digits twice, Vermont and D.C. In New Hampshire, he came in second by 20 points, in Massachusetts by 31 points, and in Utah by 52 points. What more do we need to know about that clown? Coming up on 8:30, Dr. Jonathan Tripp is going to join us this morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Going to be talking about rashes and itchy stuff. Yeah, I know, Democrats. No. That's on the way in a few minutes. He's not going to be political like me. And then after 9 o'clock news this morning, I want to talk to you about the role of the Bible in Idaho schools. Governor Butch Otter vetoing a bill that would have given the Bible a more prominent place statewide. We'll tell you why. That's ahead of the next hour of the program. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.